Human Nature, a journey in search of a peaceful and prosperous society with human nature as a guide. Led by your host, Adam Heyman.
Hello and welcome to Human Nature. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And with me, of course, my buddy Tyrone. How you doing?
Feeling spiky.
You look spiky. Do you still have poker on the brain, or are you over it after that last World
Woo!
Series enriched session? I haven't talked much about poker in a long time.
Man, that last episode got my juices flowing. I'm about to head to Vegas. I'm ready to play some cards, talk about poker. You got me inspired, Adam. I gotta admit, I kind of fell off the bandwagon of it a little bit. Sort of lost its luster for me. But the more I've gotten to host this show with you, and we talk on the side, obviously. I mean, this isn't just the only time we talk, folks. Surprise, surprise. But we have a lot in common. I mean, I love going to Vegas and doing some gambling, and I love playing poker for fun. For me, it's for fun, and for you, it's more serious. For you, it's a way to make money. So we have a little bit of a different perspective on that. But I could really get into it and talk about it all day. So I'm excited to talk about a little bit more. But Adam, why are we still talking about poker, man? That's not our usual thing.
Well, yeah, it isn't. I want to reiterate to our loyal fans that the show still isn't about poker. It's about all that other stuff, economics and political philosophy and history and human nature. But gosh darn it, I've been sort of thinking about poker a lot too. For one thing, a lot of people just been talking to me about it, asking my opinion. And in response, if you go to heymannature.com or heymannature.substack.com, you will see that I'm offering my poker coaching services. So just go to the website there, click around, see if you like the copy, and follow through, or follow the instructions, and you can have me be your poker coach. And the purpose of this here episode is to give you a little bit of a taste of that. Tyrone's got some questions he wants to ask me about particular poker concepts, and then we're going to go through just some hand histories from a friend of mine that I coach for free, just because he's a buddy. But I asked him if he'd let me submit his hands anonymously, of course, and he said sure. So you'll see sort of the wheels in motion of what it looks like to think through a no limit poker hand. The way I would think about it anyway.
Yeah, and audience, look, take the word of the porcupine hobo here. This guy's legit, all right? Adam knows his stuff. He let me say, doesn't have to work a real job because of his poker skill, unlike some suckers like yours truly, the porcupine hobo, that has to clock in at 9 to 5. But in addition,
let's just say that whether I'm legitimate or not, I promise you I can bluff my way through it pretty good.
Awesome. But in addition to that, this is not going to be just your, this is an intro how to play poker video. I'm so sick of those. There's a million of those on the internet. Look, for this episode only, if you're not interested in poker, we totally get it. You can tune out and wait for our next one. But if you are interested in poker, we're going to assume you have some poker knowledge. This is not for beginners, but it's not necessarily for experts either. We're going to dive into what I'll call some intermediate strategy. I think that's what's really lacking out there because everybody just wants to charge you for all that information. We're going to give you some of that here for free. And then, of course, if you want to take it to the super next level and become a stone cold poker player like my boy Adam over here, then you can sign up for his lessons. But Adam, you raise your finger there. What do you got to say?
Raise my information finger. You bring up a great point there. One of the reasons I don't like to talk about poker so much, or before a crowd anyway, is it's so difficult to know at what level you're going to start talking to them in, from the novice to the advanced player. And as you said, we're not really going to pull any punches. But in teaching these concepts to you, I hope that I'll be able to do so in a way that if you've played a few orbits, you should be fine. I might have to teach you what some of these things are, but it's not going to be so perplexing that you're going to walk away thinking this is quantum physics or anything like that.
Let's jump right in. I love what you've got planned for us here on this episode, because for me, the way that I learn best, it's not necessarily just by reading some books and theory, but it's actually uh, learning through real world examples. So what you've done is you've put together a couple of key topics to talk about, so some general theory. So that will be more of some general book learning type theory. But then we're going to go into some specific hand histories, real examples, and you're going to walk us through the strategy and the thought process on that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, I just blamed you for these three topics we're going to talk about, and you tried to throw that shade right back on me. I see what you did there.
Okay, well, all right. Well, let's here. I'll edit this in any which way, or left and sideways, and maybe the hand histories won't have anything to do with these strategy topics. But let's talk about three strategy topics real quick. So, when and how to defend blinds.
That's a great topic. I'm glad you brought it up. Um, the first thing is, what are the blinds, of course, and what those are is the forced money that the person to the left of the button and immediately to his left has to put in a no limit hold'em game. Um, and a lot of people make well, first, as you said, a lot of people are confused. How often do I defend my blinds? If I think somebody's raising in late position when no one else has come in, and it looks like they're picking on me, what should I do? How should I handle that? Um, and my initial thought is that if you're in a decent game, like a good game, where there's lots of loose action and people that don't play too good, or at least from your perspective, you think you play a lot better than them, I wouldn't worry that much about defending my blinds. You are out of position by definition every time you defend your blind. And it is bad to play poker out of position in general. So if the game is good, like I might just fold, anything that's not a premium hand just because. Look for a better spot. That's always something that you should keep in the back of your mind. Maybe you'll do it, maybe you won't do it, but at least you shouldn't be thinking, "Oh my gosh, I have to defend my blind, or I'm a bad player." That's not true. But that said, if you are in a tougher game, or you feel like the people who are picking on your blind are clearly doing so with a wider range than is optimal, then you have to start thinking about the strategies you're going to use to try and defeat that. And the strategy I would choose depends an awful lot on the type of opponent it is and the errors that they're making. A lot of people are doing it just because they think you're weak, but actually they're weak. And if you judiciously re-raise, they're just going to fold almost every time. And what judiciously means is doing that in a believable frequency. Don't re-raise them every time, but re-raise them, I don't know, 20 or 30% of the time. Give them enough folds that they think that you're folding the lowest portion of your range and only re-raising them, three betting them with a tight range. And against that sort of opponent, they'll just immediately fold. But more often, it's going to be someone who thinks they're a bully. And if they're that type, then they're probably going to continue to be a bully if you call on all the rest of the streets. And if that's a sort of person that you're dealing with, I would advise not re-raising with anything, calling with a wide range, including, your big pocket pairs like aces, because what you want to encourage is them to see if they can try and triple barrel you, try and bluff on flop, turn, and river. And you do not telegraph the strength of your hand, because what they're doing is executing a bully's play. I'm going to pick on the blinds, and oh crap, he called. Well, I better try again because he checked. That shows weakness. So I better bet again. So it's a nice strategy. When you've got the right kind of fool, you can get literally 3 or 4 barrels out of the guy just by disguising the strength of your hand.
Yeah, yeah. I think people hear some general poker advice and they sort of mishmash it together,
True.
and not understanding the concepts exactly. And then it's like, well, if a little bit of exercise is good for me, then maybe I'll just exercise 24 hours a day,
That's right.
right? So, like one concept is, or one thing you'll hear, that's absolutely true, is that if you maintain your buy-in, so let's say you buy in for the main event at the World Series of Poker for $10,000. If you maintain $10,000 throughout the entire tournament, you will finish second. That's a mathematical guarantee.
It's true.
If you never go below 10,000, like you just always stay at 10,000, you will finish second in the tournament. That sounds surprising when you first hear that. You're like, but then you think about it, oh, I get it. I understand why that would be the case. And then you put that together with another piece of advice that says, well, if you the only time you're forced to put in money into a game is when you're in the blinds. So if you collect your blinds back, you will maintain your original stack. So that's where this defending blinds theory comes from. So people put two and two together and they're like, okay, I should aggressively defend my blinds so that I maintain my stack and I can finish second in the World Series of Poker.
Actually, the error actually the error that they're making is more along the lines of the way you first framed it. They'll hear a poker principle concept like it's good to be aggressive, which is true. And then they will screw up and over apply the concept to the point of exercising 24 hours a day. It is good to be aggressive, but it's also good to not play very many hands. You play a nice tight range and play that range aggressively. And we'll talk about what ranges are as we go a little further.
I think this second concept uh, is one that I don't understand very well, and one that I think might be one of the more important strategies to understand. So you have here the importance of having fold points in your strategy and identifying them in your opponents. So this one you're gonna have to explain to me. I don't get it.
Well, yeah, you do. You just don't think of it this way. Like in the game of Hold'em, the first fold point you have is right off the deal. Do I play this hand or do I not? That's a fold point. And then you'll have some other ones, like even in a raised pot, if it's multi-way action and I have ace king and I just miss the flop completely and there's action, that's a fold point. I'm going to fold there every time. These are little rules that you have. Um, let's switch to a different game to demonstrate this even more powerfully. Third Street in 7 card stud high. There's a certain bunch of hands that you're going to play. Um, big suited cards, all pocket pairs and mid-level to high split pairs, especially if you have a high side card. Um, and you'll have various fold points depending on what the other up cards are. Like if you got pocket fives with a 9 up, but the two other fives are out, and then a 10 raises and a queen re-raises, you're going to fold that every single time. It's a fold point for you. So you've got specific rules. Like you only want to play the biggest pair or what rates to be the biggest pair on Third Street. Once you get to Fifth Street, you'll have another fold point. It's a common one because Fifth, Sixth, and Seventh Streets are all the big bets, the betting size doubles. So Fifth Street, you want to either have the best made hand or the best draw. And if you don't, it's a problem. If you don't have that fold point, it's a big leak in your game. It means you're going to be playing way too many hands into the later streets that don't merit playing. Well, as you're observing all of your opponents, you will begin to make a book on them. What are their general strategies? What are their fold points? What do they think good play is and what is bad play? And you make a note of all that stuff. And that's why you keep your own mouth shut and don't show your hand, even though you see it in the movies. Somebody will run a bluff and show their hand. And, oh, aren't I clever? Don't ever do that because you're giving people information about how you play. You're telling them not a fold point, but a bluff point that you have. You'd rather they don't know that, you know? So it's just making sure that you have a defined strategy so you're not making it up as you go, and then being alert to the strategies that your opponents have.
I think most definitely like very very beginner level players, but what's worse is the advanced beginner has great fold points pre-flop. I'm just going to use Hold'em here as the
Sure.
reference point. But once they're in,
They're in.
once they're post-flop,
They're in.
they have no full points.
When I first
Right, and-
started playing, I played a guy named Tex, old cowboy looking guy, and he only played maybe 5% of the hands, and he played all of them to the river. That was his strategy. He was going to
Sure.
ram and jam, you know, probably nothing worse than ace jack or something suited.
Mhm.
But he didn't care what came and what action came. He was doing just
Yep.
like you, just like you talked.
Yep. And then final concept for this episode: differences between cash games and tournaments.
Yeah, this one's pretty simple. Just by definition, the difference is in a cash game, you're playing with real money each hand, and if you wanted to, you could buy in, play one hand, and then leave. In a tournament, that is not the case. You are there until you bust out or until you win the thing. The distinction is that the chips aren't worth anything until you are able to cash them in at the end, you know, until you get a payout. So the way that affects your strategy is early on in the tournament, it doesn't affect it very much at all. Your tournament strategy should be very, very close to your cash game strategy. But then as your stack, to blind size ratio starts getting a lot shorter, you start having to switch into tournament strategies, which I'm not going to delve into on this particular episode because you could go for a week talking about it. But the point being, as things get shorter, the things that you would normally do in a cash game when your stacks are deeper, you just can't afford to do because you don't want to risk a third of your stack when you have to fold to every re-raise, for example. So tournaments used to play decades ago a whole lot different because people didn't know that. They would just keep playing their regular strategy, even though what they're doing was just goofy. There's a certain range of hands you can play when the stacks are deep early in a tournament. But later in a tournament, when you've got 15 big blinds, you just can't be raising with 9-10 suited, because it's a speculative hand and maybe you'll get there and blah, blah, blah. So for super short stacks, it becomes basically a shove or a fold decision. But then even beyond that, you're going to have a different set of strategies for 20 bigs and 25 bigs and 30 bigs and then 50 bigs. And then eventually you'll get up to a certain stack size where you're playing closer to your normal cash game strategy or adjusting it based on the stack sizes of your opponents, which you should be doing in a cash game too. But in a tournament, it's critical. You have to understand that when you're thinking about stealing the big blind and he's sitting there with 6 bigs, you're almost always going to get, maybe 6 is the wrong number, but let's say it's 15. You're almost always going to get re-raised if he's going to play. So you have to, keep that in mind.
You can't bluff a low stack.
It's true. You just can't do it.
All right, man. Well, that's all great in theory and highfalutin and stuff, and I didn't understand near 20% of it. So let's try to expand some of these theories with some real world examples and go into some actual hand histories. Now, you said these are real life hand histories.
Yep.
And you're gonna kind of give some commentary. So you provided some notes. I'm gonna read them, and then I'm gonna look like I have a stupid look on my face because I don't understand your notes. So hand history number 1. The first bullet point says 400 effective. I don't even know what the heck that means. 400 effective?
All right.
And parentheses 1 to 3 NLH, no limit hold'em, I assume. UTG under the gun, pair of jacks, it looks like. All right. Dude. Sorry, man. Maybe this is isn't quite intermediate. I'm too dumb to understand this.
This really isn't that complicated. It's just a form of notation that my student prefers. In fact, I probably taught him that. You know what pocket jacks are, and you said it yourself. Under the gun is one person to the left of the big blind. So you're the first one who has a decision to be made. That's what under the gun means. We'll get to the shorthand descriptions of the other positions on the table later. 1 to 3 is 1 to 3 blind, no limit hold'em. And 400 effective means my buddy has got at least 400 in front of him, and everybody else at the table has, a stack of a certain size. What he's telling me is that when it gets to the interesting point, the relevant stack sizes, the effective stack sizes is 400. So say my buddy has 500, my student, and his main opponent has 400. That means the effective stack size is 400.
So, and again, explain effective is sort of just like the lowest stack? I still don't understand the word effective here.
Like there were probably people dealt into this hand who had less than $400 in front of them.
You mean they
But
bought into it less than 400?
no, that the moment that the cards were dealt, that's what they had
Okay.
at the beginning of this hand. But what he's saying is that, um, I think this hand's a little different. It doesn't get heads up right away, but let's say it did. What he's saying is that the lowest stack of the two players is 400,
Mhm.
either him or his opponent. One of them has 400. So the
Okay,
effective,
so here I could interpret the word effective just to mean the of the people actively in the hand.
yeah, if someone ends up going all in,
Mhm.
what is at stake maximum for this hand is 400. That's the
Okay.
effective stack size.
Got it. Got it.
And you want to know that because sizing in this game is very important. You want to size your raises on flop, turn, and pre-flop so that you are making the most effective use of this relevant stack sizes that you have available.
Okay.
When it comes to strategy, that just becomes real important.
Okay. And I want to make this point real clear. So of the hand histories that we're going over today, they're all no limit hold'em tables because obviously the strategy changes for limit,
It does.
right?
It
Okay.
does.
So
Yeah, I don't
I
usually.
just want to keep that in mind.
It's very very hard to find a limit hold'em game anymore. You can do it, but it's difficult. So yeah, we usually
Oh,
talk about no
you
limit
should
hold'em.
come to Minnesota. No limits illegal in the state. We only have limit games.
Interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah. All right. So they get around it in certain ways. Obviously, tournaments are different. They do sit and goes where they can do some different things, but your standard walk up to the table and buy in, it's all limit here. Anyway, doesn't matter for the purposes of this. All right. So 400 effective, 1 to 3, no limit hold'em, under the gun, jacks. Okay, so this is your student here describing what he had at the start of the hand. So then he leads out for ten
Yep.
dollars. I'm assuming not 10 units. We're talking dollars, right?
Yep.
So he leads out for 10. So approximately 3 times the big blind, right? And that's sort of my standard raise. I usually do 3 to 5 times the big blind. You agree with that?
I think that's fine. What I usually do is try to adopt the custom of the game that I'm in.
Ah,
Whatever's
good
normal
advice.
for them, that isn't going to
Hmm.
make them, make their eyebrows twitch
Hmm.
unless I want
Hmm.
them to twitch. I'll usually make that my basic and then adjust as necessary.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. Okay. So anyway, he leads out for 10. Again, he's under the gun. There's 4 callers behind him. Wow, this is a loose game. Holy smokes. 4 callers behind him. Big blind jams for 24 more. So I'm assuming that means 34 total.
That's
Your
correct.
student calls and then 3 others call. Woof. Either everybody is loaded either with good cards or with good whiskey. Man, this is a loose table, right? You would agree with that?
Yeah, at this point in the hand analysis, you should be thinking, wow, this is a pretty good game.
So flop comes 8-4-2. Now it does not say here if anything is suited.
That means rainbow usually. If
Okay.
there's 2 suits or 3 suits, it'll be denoted.
All right. Flop 8-4-2. So uh your student here has a pair of jacks. He has the highest showing pair on the table right now. I mean, obviously somebody could have a higher pair in their whole cards, but as far as the board, the flop is concerned, he's showing high pair, or not showing, but he has holding high pair. So flop comes 8-4-2, which is real good for him. No real straight possibilities, no flush possibilities that he has to worry about. So then he decides to bet $100 into the dry side pot. Now that I don't understand. What do you mean dry side pot? What's that terminology?
All right. Well, right now, if I'm reading it correctly, there's 5 people in for 34. That's the main pot. So any further betting is
Oh, so
going to
somebody
go.
went all in.
Any further betting is going to go into a side pot that the person who's all in is not eligible to win. Right now, there's $0 in the side pot, therefore it's dry.
Okay, I was assuming somebody folded, but somebody just was all in. And that's why a
Right.
side pot was created.
Well, even
Okay.
if somebody folded, that money would be in the main pot. Any further betting is going to go on the
Mhm.
side.
Mhm. Oh, that's true. That's true. Okay. So now he's saying there's only one caller. So am I here to assume that everybody else folded?
Yes, exactly. And that's where the effective stack size comes in. Now, at this point, what he's saying is that either he or the other guy started this hand with $400. And, one has more, presumably. And that's why $400 is the effective stack size. You follow?
No. No, I
Well,
really don't actually.
if somebody just jammed all in right now and got called, how much money would that be?
I don't know.
Well, it's going to be 100 minus, or 100, 400 minus 134. You can't go in
Okay.
for what's in your pockets, right? All you can bet is what's in front of you on the table. And one player
Okay.
started this hand with $400,
Okay.
and they're heads up. So
Okay.
if all in happens, the max loss there is 400 based at the start of the hand.
The turn comes a deuce. Your this person, your friend here, jams for 250. So is that his entire stack? I guess I don't know what he started with.
Well, either he started with $400 or more than $400,
Sure.
and either his opponent started with, depending, the reverse of that. So he went all in for 250. That either meant that was all he had left, or that was all the guy he's playing has left.
So he's essentially putting them all in.
Yes, or himself.
And he calls.
Hmm.
And then am I to assume this last annotation that says ace eight offsuit? He's showing his cards.
Yeah, our hero wins the pot. Calls the 250, and his opponent had ace eight, and jacks beat that.
So basically, uh, our hero starts with a pair of jacks and he gets it heads up against a guy that had ace eight, and the guy hit top pair on the flop and just kept going with it.
Yeah, and in the
And
hand history, my guy didn't say what the river came, but I'm presuming that means it was nothing. It didn't affect anything.
gotcha. Okay, so Adam, what happened here? Like, what lessons? What do we learn from this?
Well, here's what I told him. First of all, remember he's under the gun. He raises, gets four callers, and then the big blind is to his immediate right, raises on top another 24, I think. And what my student did is just call. So the first thing I said to him is I would have probably re-raised fairly large here because no one has jacks beat unless they're being super, super, super sneaky, which no one is in a 1-3 game. They didn't re-raise you, when they had an opportunity to. So jacks is the best hand
Yeah.
unless the big blind has you beat. So go ahead and because I'm going to be playing out of position against all these other players, I'd just rather, put them to the test now.
Get them heads up, especially when you have a pair and you're not on a draw. You're not going for pot odds. Get
Yeah,
them heads up.
what I want them to do is freeze them out rather
Right.
than play out of position the rest of the hand or make them, make a bad call. So I probably would have made it something like 150 at this point, on top, and then planning on shoving all flops. Here's a principle to keep in mind. When you're out of position, you don't want to play really big, really deep pots out of position. It's just bad. It's much better to be able to act last. Watch your opponent have to act in front of you every street.
Right.
So that's the first thing. Because it just sucks playing a nice big bloated pot with jacks when anytime an ace or a king or a queen comes, now all of a sudden you've gone from having a great hand to being scared and you don't know what to do and you're first to act. It just sucks. So that's the first thing is I wouldn't have just called there. But as played, except for that error, I like very much the way he played the hand. The flop came out nice and innocuous, and it was bloated, which means people are going to they're going to be calling more liberally. So betting 100 into whatever it was, 100 and change, is great, especially when it leaves you with a $250 all-in turn bet. It's good sizing, so I thought it was very good.
If he's betting $100 after the flop, and I'm reading this right, he's basically betting what, a third of the pot?
No, it's more than that.
More closer to half,
2/3, real close
two
to
thirds.
2/3.
Okay, okay.
Which is great. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
that's a
a
good size.
nice
That's a good size
percentage.
bet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but more important than the percentage, it's important. You want to be thinking about that. But even more important is looking at the size of the next street. Being able,
Mhm.
what is my all-in bet, or if I want to make an all-in bet on the turn, does that make sense? And it does. You've now got 350 or whatever, and your 250 goes all in. That's a nice percentage. In a bloated pot, you're going to find yourself getting called by top pair, top kicker, for example.
Yeah.
That's why you don't play big pots with ace eight, ladies and
Right.
gentlemen.
Right. Right. Let
So,
let I got 2 follow-ups for you, Adam.
sure.
So, first, I agree with you. He made a mistake by calling, after the big blind raised. Um, however, going back to previous statement I made, I don't know if it was earlier this episode or the one before, where, I was saying something like, you hear a little bit of advice or a little bit of this is the rule, and then you just like you take it to the extreme by doing it all the time, right? And like, well, if a little calling makes sense, then a lot of calling makes sense, right? Well, for me, it's kind of the opposite. I think back in the day when Doyle Brunson's Super System came out, and everybody that thought they were a poker player read that. I think I remember Doyle Brunson saying something like, in the game of Hold'em, it's raise or fold. There is no checking or something like that. He's like, you're being aggressive. You're either raising or you're folding. And so, like, I feel like in my game, I raise probably a little too much than I should. Um, but definitely in this spot, calling doesn't give you any information. It doesn't do you any good. And you're just allowing all these other players to hit one of their draws. But what I don't understand, and I'm assuming you agree with that. I guess that was point number one. But it's point number
No,
two. No, you
no,
disagree with that.
no,
Okay.
no. I do disagree. There are plenty of times where I will call in a situation that looks identical to a novice. You have to look at the exact reasons. I am out of position. They telegraphed their range by just calling my initial bet, that $10. I have very, very specific reasons for raising, and very specific reasons for raising, the particular size that I would choose. But if I was in position with a different hand, I very well might choose to not bloat the pot there. There's all sorts of good reasons to do that. Maybe I don't want to blow out their weak ranges. The reason my student asked me about this hand is because frequently I will admonish him because he will make the mistake of building a pot so big he couldn't win it. You ever heard that saying?
No.
It's when a novice is scared, and so he puts a whole bunch of money in with one pair usually.
Okay.
And the way the action plays out, there's just no way a player who doesn't have that hand beat can ever call. You're building a pot so big that it's impossible for you to win it. And the reason he sent this hand to me, because it just looks like a pretty straightforward hand.
Yeah.
But he was wondering if he made a mistake. Did I overplay this hand? Is what he asked me that I didn't put in the hand history. And I said, no. It has to do with the action pre-flop and how dry the board was. He didn't overplay his hand. There was all sorts of weak ranges that had reason to call him, and in fact, one did. But you could see somebody calling with ace king or something like that, or tens or nines. There was plenty of room for people with hands that a pair of jacks beats to put money in. But the reason I give him crap about overplaying one pair is when he doesn't understand the situation, and he'll do. In fact, I wrote down an example. Like, say he finds himself somehow involved in a hand with like king five suited, and the board comes out on the flop king jack nine. If a big pot breaks out, there's no way you can win it, right? I mean, you can just tell yourself that everyone has, a straight draw or something, but that's just crazy. You're building a huge pot with a hand that's just top pair weak kicker. You can never win it like that. So what he was worried about is that even though he won this pot, it's like, did I build too big a pot with just a pair of jacks? It's not that big a hand. The only reason I bring that up is just to show you that when I teach poker, I'm going to teach you the principle that is in operation here. and there are probably going to be 6 or 7 principles in operation. You have to decide which ones are applicable in the context of this particular situation.
All right, let's move on to hand history number 2. So here it's saying $350 effective. Again, 1 to 3 limit, 1 to 3 no limit hold'em. Small blind. So I'm assuming he's in the small blind with 9-7 offsuit.
Correct.
So 2 people limp in. So if you don't know what that means, again, we're doing this for intermediate players, guys. If you don't know what limping is, go read a book about poker. But no, 2 people just limp in. They call. He calls. So he's just completing to the big blind, and the big blind checks. Let me stop you there. Do you agree with that strategy? Here I am defending. I have this instinct to defend my blinds. If I complete a blind in the small blind, I'm almost always raising it, especially if I got 2 limpers.
Wow. Maybe I will have to charge you. No, I think this is an obvious just call. 9-7 offsuit isn't anything to write
No,
home about.
it's terrible. It's a
Yeah, it's
terrible
fine.
hand,
It's
but
fine.
defend the blinds.
Well, think about what's happening here. He's getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's getting 7 to 1 on his call, and he might flop his brains out. Yeah, of course you call here. The only reason you wouldn't is if the history of the table leads you to believe, or a tell or something leads you to believe that the big blind's going to raise. But if that's not the case, no, calling here is the absolute normal thing to do.
The flop comes 10-8-5 suited, but I don't know which cards are suited.
It doesn't mean suited. SSC's saying spade, 2 spades.
What are the 2 spades?
The SS, or if they were clubs, it would be CC. He's telling you that 2 of these, we don't know which 2 are spades.
Okay, so we have 2 spades on the board, 10-8-5, but we don't know which are the 2 spades. Okay.
Right.
So right now he's doing he has an open-ended straight draw and an inside straight draw. I guess that
It's
would
just
be
an
a
open-ender.
10 high straight at that point if he catches the 6. All right, he checks. So remember, he's in the small blind. So first to act after the button, he checks on his draw. Okay, that kind of makes sense. You want pot odds on a draw. Big blind checks as well. Middle position bets 20. Cutoff, and he calls. So no one is raising here. He's on a straight draw, so him just calling makes sense, right?
Oh, we'll get into my analysis when we get to the end here.
Oh, okay. All right. In that case, I'll just go through. The turn comes offsuit 10. The player checks. Middle position checks. Cutoff bets 40. Okay. So cutoff, that's interesting. 10 on the turn. So now we have a pair of 10s on the board. Interesting. Wonder what cutoff would have been playing. Guess you could have been playing something like ace 10, I suppose. Hits top
Or 10
pair.
check. I mean, the way I read this, I'm just
Yeah.
putting everybody on the most obvious thing, because why not?
Sure.
And it looks like
Sure.
one guy hit top pair with the 10, or no, what was it? Oh no, the board paired. Yeah, that one
Yeah.
is weird. I don't know why middle
Yeah.
position checked, but anyway, he checked and cut off bets.
Yeah. The cutoff is interesting. He hit something.
Oh, I wouldn't say that.
No, you think he's bluffing?
And no, there isn't that much information. Not much changed. The top card on the board paired. So what I think is the reason that the cutoff is betting is because the guy who had the lead checked. I think I would bet almost my entire range here.
All right, the player calls, middle position calls. The river is an offsuit jack. So there's a lot on this board that could
Well, our hero just made a straight.
And the hero leads for 150 with 150 behind in the stack. All right. that's where the hand history ends. Run us through it.
First of all, you're in the worst position, small blind, and you've got a $12 pot, not counting whatever the rake is, and you flop this open ender straight draw, and a guy bets $20 into it. I think you should have just folded that flop. There's hardly any money in there right now. You're playing a drawing hand out of position, which is generally bad. In general, you would rather be playing made hands and short stacks out of position. And you're drawing hands and hopefully in deeper stacks in position. That's just a general principle you should keep in mind. So I think the call here is pretty bad. I would not have made it. And one of the reasons is, again, you're out of position. Just to give a sense of what this is, he bets and you call. It's fairly big. The pot just got bloated from your perspective. The board comes the top card of 10 pairs, and now you're there to have to check again. And any player in this situation is just going to bet. And what are you going to do? You're just going to have to give it up, or you should give it up. If you to try and give yourself the intuition of why you don't play these drawing hands out of position, just put yourself in the position. What if this was happening to you?
Yeah, and I'm playing a little bit of the Joker here, or the heel. For me personally, 9-7 offsuit, even though I'm the small blind, if I had two limpers in front of me, that indicates something to me, that they have something good enough for them to keep playing, even if they're just limping in. For me, 9-7 offsuit, I'm throwing that away in the small blind.
That's too tight.
Again, that's too tight.
It's way too tight. You're getting 7-1
on your a one gap offsuit.
You're getting 7-1 on your call.
I
don't think I'd play any two cards, but I would definitely play a single gapper. Heck yeah.
9-7 offsuit. Maybe if they were suited. All right.
Well, I don't want to get all. I don't want to get all pedantic. I don't want to get all pedantic, but poker isn't a game about 9s and 7s. It's a game of money. You're getting 7-1 odds. Okay. That's what you should be thinking about.
Sure.
And it's 7-1, and we're not even talking about the implied odds. What happens when you flop a really weird full house, or flop a straight, or flop two pair? You're getting more than 7-1 when you think about it.
So, ladies and gentlemen, what Adam's talking about is something called pot odds. Next time I go play poker, I'm bringing my Texas Instruments TS95 with me so I can divide all that math. See if I'm getting the right odds.
I got a watch I can do that with. All right, so that's the first thing. I think my student made a mistake here. But assuming he did call, and he did, I think he made another mistake on the turn. The guy's repping, top pair, basically. We're a little too thin in the action for a guy to be repping anything. But what he's repping is top pair, and if that's the case, he just made trips, and you're still sitting there with a straight draw, and he's still giving you horrible odds, and you're still out of position. So if you get there, you have to act first. So I think calling the turn is really, really bad too. But given that he did that, and then he gets there on the end, what do we think about him betting 150 with 150 behind? And my analysis here is that it's too big. You should be betting here, given that the flop bet was 20, the turn bet was 40. I would bet something like 65 or 70, planning on folding if I get raised. It's the principle again is something about making your sizing something that can get called. Don't build a pot so big you can't win it.
Yeah, and this style of poker is not in my wheelhouse. The cash game, no limit hold'em tables, again, where I live, we don't have those types of games, so I've never really practiced them. So the no limit I play is in actual tournaments, right? So that's a little bit of a different strategy. But even in that, if you're going to bet half your stack, so when he says at the very end there, I lead for 150 to 150 behind, he's put 50% of his stack at risk. Well, if you're going in for half your stack, you're going in for all your stack. I mean, there's really
That's not true.
Well, for me,
Well,
It's-
you're used to
especially in a no
playing
limit hold tournament.
tournaments and
Yeah,
probably lower limit tournaments, right?
yeah, yeah.
So you are used to playing very, very short stacked no limit poker.
Right, right.
Most of your decisions are done by the pre-flop or on the flop.
Yeah,
But
100%. Right.
in cash games, you want to be thinking. That's what makes, I mean, Doyle Brunson called No Limit Hold'em the Cadillac of poker, and it wasn't because of tournaments. It was because of this deep
The
game,
cash
cash
games,
game
mm,
aspect.
where you could
Becau
rebuy it back in if you needed to.
Yeah, and where you can take people into deep waters. I mean, be
Okay.
3 betting pre-flop gets a lot more interesting,
Yeah.
when you can bet a huge amount on the flop and then another huge amount on the turn and then go all in for 8x, on the river. It just gets a lot more interesting. You're playing a much more interesting game.
Yeah, so I guess from that perspective, really, so from a turn-in perspective, I bet 50% of my stack. I only
Yes.
have 50% left. But in a cash game, in theory, I have an infinite stack
Yeah,
because
and
I can keep
probably
buying in.
and probably in a tournament, there's hardly any situations where you are putting 50% in. I mean, you're begging for
Right,
calls, that's for sure, because otherwise
right,
you'd just be going all in. You just bet 2x your amount and just get
right,
it all over with. If
right.
you're bluffing, give it that much more power. And if you're
Exactly.
trying to extract value, then get that much more value.
That's
These
exactly
intermediate,
right.
yeah, that's why tournaments, especially these low level ones, are kind of crappy. I
Yeah,
mean,
they are.
there is a science to them. There is an art to them. There's definitely concepts and principles you need to learn, and fold shove strategies you need to learn,
Yeah.
and then the more intricate versions too. But for my money, the elegant part of No Limit Hold'em is in the cash realm because
Mm.
it stays interesting, because it gets deep and stays deep.
And it's real money.
That too.
So, like, that adds a psychological element to it that a tournament doesn't have, because once you spend your $45, $50, $100, whatever your buy-in is, and they give you $1,500 in chips to start with, well, it's not real money after that point, right? So you be a little looser, people play a little looser, bluffing gets a little harder. Whereas in a cash game, it's real money that people are putting in.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's wrap this up with one more example. Man, I'm learning a lot here, Adam. This is fantastic. I'm glad I'm getting this lesson for free. But, folks, if you think you've heard anything good here, do not subscribe to the Porcupine Hobos Poker Advice channel, because that sucks. Instead, you want to go to heymannature.com and sign up. Oh, no, Adam, are you doing that somewhere else?
No, you
Your
can get that link on our Substack, the Heyman Nature Substack, which you can
There's a
get,
link to that. Okay, great.
yes, by going to heymannature.com. That'll redirect, or directly to heymannature.substack.com. Go to the navigation bar at the top, and you'll see a link that's obvious, something like, do you want Adam to be your coach? Click on that and follow the instructions.
Cool, cool, cool. All right, let's do one more hand history. Number 3. All
3.
right, so now we're still in a no limit hold'em cash game, but we've gone up a little bit to a $2, $3. Now, I've played a lot of cash limit games, and what I've found is that the lower limits they're unbeatable. Nobody ever folds. Everybody calls everything. It's garbage. Uh,
Are you
uh,
honestly advancing the proposition that you cannot figure out a way to beat a poker game in which nobody folds?
I can't do it, Adam.
I think
You're
I think I can devise a strategy that would be able to exploit, these
you're
errors.
going to have to come to Minnesota and see for yourself. All right. Anyway, in this
Well, hold on,
situation,
before you move
yeah,
on,
go ahead.
the reason most people say that low limit, uh, cash games aren't beatable is because the rake, or the hourly fee charged or whatever it is, based on the size of the game, is just way too high. Like, you can go and play a 3-6 limit hold'em game and, have them take 7 or $8 out of every pot. That's pretty hefty. You need the
Yeah.
game to be real good to overcome that kind of a rake.
Hmm. Okay. This is a 2-3 no limit hold'em, 500 effective. BTN Ace 3 CC. Okay, you're gonna have to explain some of this jargon to me. What's BTN?
That's this little round disc on the table.
Oh, button. Okay, gotcha. Never mind. Dude,
And
you
ace
gotta spell
three.
you gotta spell this shit out. Like this weird abbreviations you got going on and stuff. Who abbreviates button as BTN?
Well, my student does because he was texting it to me.
Okay. Well, when you write the notes for me to read, you can rewrite them a little bit. You know what I'm
Well,
saying?
if the goal was clarity and smoothness, then I would have done that. But if the goal was hilarity and me enjoying myself, then I think I did it perfect.
All right. So your student's on the button. He has ace three of clubs. So I'm assuming that
Yes.
means suited.
Yes.
Under the gun makes it 10. Late position, LP, I'm
Correct.
assuming. Late
Correct.
position calls, I call, or he calls, big blind calls. Flop comes ace, ace, four. It gets checked to him. He's on the button, remember? So he bets 10 into the pot.
Which is?
The small blind and under the gun both call. So go ahead. Sorry, you have a comment there?
Oh, I was just, you said he bet 10 into the pot. I was just wondering if you knew how big the pot was.
Let's see. If it's 2-3, there's got to be 5 from the blinds. Under the gun makes it 10, so we're up to 15. Call is 25. He calls. He's on the button, so we're at 35. Big blind calls. Big blind would only have to go up to -3. So another 7. So we're at $42. Is that right?
Yeah, I would have just gone 10 times 4 and said it's about $40.
So
But the reason I
42
asked
bucks, and
is that
he bets 25%
yeah,
of the
the reason
pot.
I asked is that most players, even players who are regulars, who've been playing for decades, most players know they should keep track of the pot at all times, and most players don't. So I only interrupted to tell everybody that when you play cards, know how much is in the pot at all times. You're gonna need that
Oh yeah,
information.
that's
You're
a good
gonna need
point.
it.
Yeah,
So
so
four
I
times 10, there's 4 players, 4 times 10 is
yeah.
$40. That's how much is in there.
So for me, I kind of have some standard sort of, what do I want to call them? Standard sort of bet sizes. So if I'm raising initially, I usually do 3 times the big blind. I will sometimes make that 5 times the big blind, and I won't get into why I make that difference. It has to do with, sometimes I feel like you know the player you're betting into, and whether that size difference will make a difference, whether they're going to fold a marginal hand or not. So I'll go somewhere between 3 and 5 will be my standard initial raise. But then once I get post flop, I'm usually doing percentages of the pot. So I agree with you. It's important to know the pot size. I will generally do 50, 75% or the full pot, or I'm shoving all in. Those are sort of my uh check marks for the size of my bets. Now, I know that's not very sophisticated. I'm not a huge sophisticated player. I just need some simple math.
Yeah, just because you brought it up, uh, it's too big a concept to cover here, but in general, you shouldn't be altering the size of your bet based on what you want the opponent to do or based on the strength of your hand. If you think about it from a game theory optimal perspective, that's really exploitable. You should be altering or thinking about the sizing of your bet based on the texture of the flop and the stack sizes, not
Mm.
your hand strength or anything in particular that you want to do. Now, obviously, on the margins, you're going to shade that a little bit. You know, there's psychology to this too, but in general, it's flop texture and stack size, not hand strength. But
Why
anyway,
would
let's move on.
why does stack size matter in a cash game? You can always just buy in for more.
Not in the middle of the hand, you can't.
I know not in the middle of the hand, but
But that means everything. You want to be you want to know what kind of sizing you can make on the next street. How big a bet can you make on the next street? And if he calls that, how big can I make on the street after that?
okay.
Because how
So
goofy would it be if you made a raise and
mhm,
then made a big bet on the turn and left yourself with $50 to bet on the river?
right.
You clearly screwed up, and you probably screwed up. You didn't take into account how you wanted to size things all the way through the hand. And
Yep.
to make that decision rationally, you need to be aware of all these things.
All right. Let's finish this one up here. Flop comes ace, ace, 4, gets checked to him. He bets 10. Okay, we covered that, right?
Yeah, he bet 10 into 40 and gets 2 callers. Small blind and under the gun.
Okay. So then the turn comes to 5, gets checked to him. He bets 10. Again, so here again, I feel like we've got a small bet. 10 again seems relatively small to the size
It
of the
is.
pot.
It is.
So either he's trying to elicit calls by making it such a cheap pot odds a bet, or he's made a mistake. What was your comment on this one?
Well, let's finish it. Let's finish it out.
Okay.
I'll
Small
give you.
blind makes it 35. Under the gun makes it 90. So now we're really bumping it up. So the small blind basically 2.5 times his bet, and then the under the gun really jacks it up to 90. So the question from your student is, how often do you fold here?
Yeah. Do you have an intuition?
Yeah, mine's 100%. I'm folding.
That's exactly what I said. Yeah, you're never winning here.
Yeah, not with ace 3.
Yeah. You brought up how small the bet was. He is supposed to bet very small here. I think 10 is slightly too small because, as you pointed out, it sort of looks weak. You want calls, but you don't want raises because you have
Right.
3 aces. Yay, big hand, but you've got the
Yep.
worst kicker imaginable. So you don't want to generate a bunch of action with a hand you're almost certainly losing with. So you want to make it small so they'll call with a lot of things like pocket sevens, pocket eights. Here's another principle to have in mind. When you're betting, why are you doing that? What do you want to happen? If you're doing it for value, what kinds of hands will call that bet in standard poker opponent psychology that would have limped pre-flop and then are on this board and will still call your bet at the size that you make it? Be thinking about
Right.
that. What could it be? What can be calling me here? What wants to call?
Yeah.
And size your bet appropriately. Now, I think 10's a little bit too small. I probably would have gone 15 or 20, but keeping it small is smart. And then, yeah, when you get check raised and then check 3-bet, yeah, you're
It's
obviously
not even
beat.
close. You're beat. You're beat.
You're obviously beat.
Yeah, I think this demonstrates again what we were talking about earlier. A lot of people, once they're in, especially post flop, they're in till the end. They find it hard to find those fold points. But also the bigger thing here, I think, is people get too excited about big hands because they're only looking at it from their perspective. They're saying, wow, I've got trips. I've got 3 aces, right? But and then you become blind to what other people must have or might have, right? There's other people in the game and they're also playing too, and they're betting into you and they're raising. You need to understand that information. But also, I think another mistake a lot of beginners make is they flop a set, uh and the set is just like in this example where the pair that makes their set is on the board,
Yeah.
rather than the pair in their hand and then only one card on the board. A set is still powerful. It's great, but
The
if he had, let's just say he played deuce 7 offsuit, the greatest starting hand of all of poker. Everybody out there, you should play that all the time and raise all in every time you have deuce 7 offsuit. And if he had deuce 7 and the flop came deuce deuce ace, then I think his set is a lot more strong because fewer people are going to play a deuce versus an ace to start with.
So, very good point. I'm going to disagree with your terminology there. There's a distinction between a set and trips. Those are not synonyms. On a paired board and you've got one in your hand, there you have trips. But to have a set, you have to have a pocket pair. You can either have
I
a
guess
set of you
I
can
didn't
either have a
realize that.
set of trips or a set of quads. But a set means you have a pocket pair in your hand and you've hit something on the board.
Well, look at the big brain on Adam teaching us all here, folks. And if you would like more
Hang
poker
on,
lessons like that,
hang on a second. Hang on a
oh,
second.
rewind.
Before we jam into the CTA, look at what happened on the river. It's kind of interesting, right? How many aces are in a poker deck?
4.
There are 4. Well, what happened on the river? Our hero has an ace. There's 2 on the board. That's 3. Then he gets raised and re-raised. Well, there's only one other ace left. So what was
Right.
going on the end here? How would you read this situation?
Are you talking after the turn? Because we don't
No,
see
I'm
the
talking
river
about
here.
I'm talking about when he's folding here. You know, he bets 10, and
Mhm.
big blind makes it 35, and the limper, whatever it is, makes it what was it, 90?
Well, my
Yeah, 35 and
my
90. So yeah, what
yeah,
do you
my
think happened
reaction
there?
is he had ace something,
Yeah, who?
the under the gun guy.
And what did the big blind have?
Do you mean the small blind?
Yeah, whoever the other guy is. Yeah, the small blind. What
He
did he have?
probably had. Oh, okay, that's a good question. Since he did raise,
Yeah, he check raised the turn. What did he have?
ace 4. Maybe a middle pair.
Nah,
No,
no.
I don't. I don't guess I have no idea what he
A
had,
middle
but
pair doesn't have any reason to raise here. A middle pair is in perfect calling situation. I either have this guy beat because he's bluffing, or he's got me
I
crushed.
guess I don't know the suit, so maybe he's on a flush draw.
Nobody check raises with a flush draw on a paired
Yeah,
board out of position.
yeah.
Nobody does that. What this is, how I read this is, this guy is bluffing based on the perceived weakness of that $10 bet on the turn.
Okay.
And then he ran into the guy who
Interesting.
really had, I mean, as it
Right,
turns
right,
out,
right,
both
right,
players
right.
either, I mean, the other guy could have, the other guy who made it 90, he could have flopped a set, and have an under full.
Sure.
But he probably has a bigger ace. But anyway, it's just interesting to see, what do you think's going on here? And what you telegraphed, what my student telegraphed here by betting small and betting small again, is that's a universal sign of weakness. It's a guy who feels like checking here would be small, to be like giving up, but I don't want to risk too much money, so I'm going to make a
Yeah.
weak looking bet. So just be aware that that's a thing that people will pick up on. You can use it to your advantage when you have a monster and you're up against someone who's tricky like that. It's like throwing bait, to catch a fish to gobble up the lure. But don't do it when you actually are weak, because it looks weak, because it is. Anyway, I just wanted to point that out.
Well, that's a great lesson, Adam. And folks, if you like that and you're into poker and you want to learn more, and maybe you think Adam can help you help your game out, as I know he's helped mine, go to heymannature.com and click on that link, and Adam will connect with you, and you guys can turn to conquer the world of poker. So, but Adam, I don't think we're done yet. I think we got a few more of these hand histories to go for, and I have a surprise bonus. I have
Yeah,
my own strategy.
ladies and gentlemen, for our paid subscribers, who we are eternally grateful for and constantly on the lookout for valuable content to give them, Tyrone and I are going to go back behind the paywall at heymannature.substack.com, and we're going to run over a couple more hand histories. And Tyrone is going to tell us that I'm all wet, and he's got the real solution for how to beat these Vegas games. So head on over there. Thank you, my spiky friend, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching Heyman Nature.